A 21-year-old walks onto a practice court at the All England Club, the most iconic tennis venue on earth, 48 hours before the biggest match of her life. The grass is cut to perfection. The London air is still. Her team watches from the side, quietly confident. Then she winds up for a forehand she has hit 10,000 times before, and something goes wrong. A sound. A sudden stop. And then she is clutching her shoulder, her face twisted in a way that makes everyone around her freeze in place. Nobody speaks. Nobody moves. The only thing that fills that silence is dread, because every single person on that practice court understands exactly what this could mean. Not just for her match. Not just for her tournament. But for an entire nation of 115 million people who had spent weeks watching this young woman do the impossible, and who were, at that exact moment, beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could do it again on the grandest stage in tennis. This is the story of Alex Eala, the girl from Quezon City who climbed to places no Filipino had ever reached, who did it carrying more pressure than most athletes will face in a lifetime, and who, when her body finally said enough, looked down at her shoulder, took a breath, and made a decision that tells you everything you need to know about who she is. But before we get to that decision, you need to understand how she got here, because the injury scare did not happen in a vacuum. It was the final punctuation mark on one of the most physically and emotionally demanding stretches of tennis any young player has put herself through, and to fully appreciate what Alex Eala is, you have to go back to the beginning of the grass season and watch the whole thing unfold like the incredible story it is. It starts in Birmingham in early June 2026, on a warm afternoon when most of the tennis world's attention is elsewhere. Alex is playing in the Lexus Birmingham Open, a WTA 125 event that draws solid competition but rarely makes international headlines. She drops the first set and the casual observer might have moved on, clicked to another match, assumed the result was already written. Instead, she fights back with a kind of stubborn grinding tennis that would become her signature over the next 3 weeks, eventually defeating Nicola Bartonova in 3 sets and claiming her first career grass court title. 2 WTA 125 titles now to her name. World ranking moving up to number 33. A grass court record of 9 wins from her last 10 matches going into the most important few weeks of her career. Birmingham matters, but what comes next is what really changes everything. Because then she heads to Berlin. She enters the WTA 500 Berlin Open on a wild card. No one is talking about her as a threat. She is not seeded. She has never been to the quarterfinals of a 500-level event before. The draw is brutal, full of established names who have been competing at this level for years. And she starts beating them one by one in a way that makes you sit up, rewind the highlights, and watch again just to make sure you saw it right. The round of 16 brings Donna Vekic, who had been on a 5-match winning streak on grass. Alex dismantles her, 5-7, 6-3, 7-5. Clinical. Controlled. A statement. But that is only the setup, because next comes Elena Rybakina, the 2022 Wimbledon champion, the reigning Australian Open queen, world number 2 on the planet. On paper, this is not supposed to be a match. On paper, Alex Eala is the wild card who had a nice run in Berlin and will now get a tough lesson from one of the most powerful players in the world. In reality, she wins 5-7, 6-4. One of the biggest upsets in women's tennis in 2026. And she is not done. The quarterfinals bring Alina Svitolina, world number 8. Another top 10 player. Another dangerous opponent with a huge game and the experience to go with it. Another Alex Eala victory, this time 6-3, 6-4, clean and efficient. 2 top 10 wins in the same tournament. Run to the semifinals of a WTA 500 on grass. 195 ranking points added to her total. Her ranking surges from 35 to 30, leapfrogging names like Emma Raducanu and Donna Vekic. She earns over $57,000 in prize money. But the most important thing she earns in Berlin is not measurable in points or money or any statistic you can find in a box score. She earns the right to call herself something that no Filipino tennis player had ever been able to call themselves before. A seeded player at a Grand Slam. When Victoria Mboko of Canada withdraws from Wimbledon due to a knee injury, the draw shifts, and Alex Eala moves to position 29. The number 29 seed at Wimbledon 2026. The first Filipino in the history of the Open era to earn a seeding at any Grand Slam tournament. The reaction in the Philippines is hard to put into words if you were not there to see it. Tennis fans who had been following her career for years wept openly. People who had never watched a tennis match in their lives were suddenly learning the rules, following the draw, looking up who her potential opponents might be. Across social media, her name was everywhere. On news channels, her face was everywhere. In group chats, in school classrooms, in offices, in homes, people were talking about Alex Eala the way Filipinos talk about their greatest sporting moments, because that is exactly what this was. But here is the thing about moments of pure joy in sports. They almost always arrive carrying something heavy underneath, something that the celebration temporarily hides but does not eliminate. And in Alex Eala's case, that something was her shoulder. The signs had been there for anyone paying close attention. During the Berlin semi-finals against Ludmila Samsonova, she visibly struggled. Her returns were off, her power was diminished, her movement between points had a guardedness to it that did not match the player who had just beaten two top 10 opponents. She was bothered by what appeared to be a shoulder and elbow issue, and Samsonova, who is one of the most aggressive players on tour, exploited every moment of hesitation, finishing with 33 winners and taking the match convincingly. After the loss, Alex posted on Instagram with the kind of warmth and gratitude that is genuinely characteristic of who she is, talking about how full her heart was and how special Berlin had been. Beautiful words. Sincere words. But underneath them, the physical toll of what she had just been through was unmistakable to anyone watching closely. Then came Bad Homburg, her final tune-up before Wimbledon. And there it was in every photograph, every practice clip, every match feed. The heavy strapping around her shoulder. Not a subtle brace or a small piece of supportive tape. Thick, visible, unmistakable wrapping that answered questions nobody was officially asking. Was she injured? The answer in every image was obvious, even if no one in her camp was saying it out loud. She lost in the first round to Elise Mertens, 6-3, 6-3. Quickest exit of her grass season. Earliest loss of a run that had otherwise been spectacular. Her coaches from the Rafa Nadal Academy, who had been with her through the highs and the scares, did what good teams do. They managed the situation, kept the information close, tried to protect their player from the noise that comes when the world decides to speculate about your health. Commentators had been raising the alarm for weeks. Playing 4 grass events back-to-back, Birmingham, Queen's Club, Berlin, Bad Homburg, was an enormous physical load for a body that was only 21 years old, that had never carried this kind of schedule or this kind of expectation before. The shoulder strapping made the risk tangible. But the momentum was intoxicating, the seeding was historic, and the tournament was right there. So forward she went. And then came the practice court. 2 days before her first-round match. The moment no one wanted and everyone feared. That forehand. That sound. That silence. The version of events that spread fastest on social media was, as it usually is, the most dramatic one. Tear. Career ending. Withdrawn. The hashtags moved quickly. The fans who had traveled thousands of miles to watch her play, the 25,000 Filipino supporters who had purchased Wimbledon tickets, many of them for the first time in their lives, began sending messages that captured the specific heartbreak of watching something extraordinary slip toward disaster. Please, not like this. She worked too hard for this. Laban. Alex. Fight. The entire Philippine online community mobilized in that strange, powerful way that only happens when a nation is genuinely scared for someone they love. Prayer vigils were organized. The hashtag #LabanAlex trended globally. Former players offered their support. The tennis world, which had been paying closer and closer attention to this young Filipina all spring, held its collective breath and waited for news that everyone hoped would be manageable and everyone feared might not be. The medical evaluation happened behind closed doors. Doctors examined the shoulder. Tests were run. The team conferred. Time passed slowly. And then the verdict came, and it was not the worst-case scenario. It was a strain. A warning. The kind of message a body sends when it has been pushed further than it probably should have been, a firm signal to pay attention, to be careful, to acknowledge the limits that had been quietly approached over weeks of extraordinary effort. She was not out. She was not done. She was hurting, and she was going to play anyway. Because Alex Eala does not quit, and anyone who had watched her all spring already knew that about her without needing to be told. When she came out of that medical evaluation, something in her face had shifted. The fear that had been visible in those initial moments on the practice court was still there underneath. You could see traces of it if you looked carefully enough, But over it was something else entirely. Focus. Resolve. The particular kind of quiet determination that separates athletes who compete from athletes who win. She announced her intention to play, and when that news reached the Philippines, the relief was physical. You could feel it through screens. You could read it in the comments, in the messages, in the tone of every update that followed. She was in the draw. She was going to step onto that grass. The dream was still alive. Now here is where the story gets really interesting, because the injury scare did not just test Alex Eala's body. It revealed something about the psychology of a player who was already proving herself to be special, a player who had beaten the world number 2 and number 8 not because she was the most powerful or the most experienced player on tour, but because when the moment got big and the pressure got heavy, she found something inside herself that most players never access. There is a version of this story where the practice court incident breaks her mentally, where she walks onto center court against Mexico's Renata Zarazua carrying the weight of the scare, the shoulder strapping visible under her kit, the doubts of the whole world pressing down on her with every swing. And there is another version of this story. The version where everything that happened on that practice court, the fear, the silence, the waiting, the decision to play anyway, becomes the thing that clears her head completely. Because she has already faced the worst. She has already looked at the possibility of it being over before it started, and she chose to keep going. That choice is made. It cannot be unmade. All that is left now is the tennis. And if her spring has taught us anything about Alex Eala, it is that when the only thing in front of her is the tennis, she is extraordinary. The draw is interesting. Her first-round opponent is Renata Zarazua, a capable Mexican player who knows how to compete on grass. Winnable, but not easy. And beyond that first round, if she gets through it, there is the potential for a second-round match that would have been unthinkable even a year ago. Serena Williams. The greatest player in the history of the sport. The kind of matchup that tennis writers spend careers dreaming about. It has not happened yet, and whether it does depends on results that cannot be predicted, but the very existence of that possibility tells you how far Alex Eala has traveled in a very short time. She walked into the grass court season as a 21-year-old from Quezon City with a promising ranking and a reputation as a hard worker who competed well above her years. She is walking into Wimbledon as the number 29 seed, a player who has beaten 2 top 10 opponents at the same tournament, a player who has a grass court record that any established professional would be proud of, and a player who has spent the last 48 hours proving, quietly and without fanfare, that she is built differently than most people her age. The shoulder strapping will be there. The questions about fitness will follow her from the first ball she strikes in the first round to whatever the final match of her tournament turns out to be. That is the reality of competing injured at a Grand Slam, and anyone who pretends otherwise has not been paying attention. But the story of Alex Eala has never been the story of a player who had everything go smoothly. It has been the story of a player who finds a way. Who drops the first set and fights back. Who walks into a 500-level event as a wild card and beats the world number 2. Who clutches a hurt shoulder on a practice court 2 days before the biggest match of her life, listens to the doctors, makes her decision, and walks back out ready to compete. The weight of 115 million people's hopes is real. It is not a metaphor. It is something she carries every single time she steps on a court, every time she raises her racket, every time she serves out a game or fights back from a breakdown. Filipino fans plan their evenings around her matches. They gather together. They arrange dinners. They build community around watching their girl compete. That is not nothing. That is everything. And Alex Eala understands it, honors it, and somehow uses it as fuel rather than letting it become a burden. So the question everyone is asking right now, the one hanging in the air above the All England club as Wimbledon begins, is not really about her shoulder. It is about her story. Is the injury scare the thing that breaks the momentum, the moment that reality finally catches up with the dream? Or is it exactly what it looks like when you step back and see the whole picture? One more obstacle for a player who has made a career out of turning obstacles into chapters in a story worth telling. The tennis world is watching. The Philippines is watching. And somewhere inside the All England club, probably hitting forehands on a practice court with her shoulders strapped and her chin up, Alex Eala already knows the answer.